My daughter gave me vitamins for my memory every day. One day, I passed out. She took me to the hospital, pretending I had gone crazy. But she froze when the doctor. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Kelly, and at 64 years old, I thought I knew myself pretty well. I'd raised 3 children, buried a husband, and managed to keep my little house in order for 40 years. But lately, I wasn't so sure about anything anymore. It started with small things. I'd walk into the kitchen and forget why I was there. I'd call my neighbor by the wrong name, even though I'd known her for 15 years. Once, I found myself standing in my backyard in my nightgown at 3 in the morning, with no memory of how I got there. "Mom, you're scaring me," my daughter Ellie said when I told her about the nightgown incident. She was sitting across from me at my kitchen table, her perfectly manicured hands wrapped around a coffee mug. At 38, Ellie had always been my most successful child, a real estate agent who drove a new BMW and wore designer clothes that cost more than my monthly Social Security check. "I don't understand what's happening to me," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The words felt heavy in my mouth, like admitting defeat. Ellie reached across the table and patted my hand. "Mom, I think you need to face reality. You're getting older, and sometimes our minds just, well, they start to go." The way she said it, so matter-of-fact, made my stomach twist. "But I'm only 64. That's not that old." "Dad was 67 when he started forgetting things," she reminded me. My husband Robert had indeed shown signs of memory loss before his heart attack 3 years ago, but this felt different. This felt wrong. Ellie stood up and walked to my kitchen counter, opening the cabinet above the coffee maker. "I brought you something that might help." She pulled out a bottle of vitamins, the kind you'd find at any pharmacy, with a white label that read, "Memory Support Complex." "What is it?" I asked, taking the bottle from her hands. "Special vitamins for memory and cognitive function. My friend Sarah's mother takes them, and they've really helped her." Ellie's smile was bright, reassuring. "You just take one every morning with breakfast." I read the label, but the small print was blurry. I'd need my reading glasses, which were probably somewhere upstairs. "Are you sure these are safe?" "Of course they're safe, Mom. They're just vitamins." Ellie opened the bottle and shook out a small blue pill. "Here, let's start right now. You haven't had breakfast yet, have you?" I hadn't. In fact, I couldn't remember if I'd eaten anything since yesterday evening. Another thing that had been happening lately: forgetting meals, forgetting to do simple things I'd done automatically for decades. Ellie made me scrambled eggs while I took the vitamin with a glass of orange juice. The pill was larger than I expected and left a bitter aftertaste that the juice couldn't quite wash away. "I should probably see a doctor," I said as she set the plate in front of me. "Let's see how these vitamins work first," Ellie suggested. "If you don't feel better in a few weeks, then we'll make an appointment. But honestly, Mom, I think you're just stressed. You've been alone in this house too long since Dad died." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just lonely and anxious, and my mind was playing tricks on me. Ellie visited twice a week and called every day. My son Marcus lived in California and rarely contacted me, and my youngest David was deployed overseas with the military. Ellie was the only one who seemed to care. Over the next few days, I took the vitamins religiously. Every morning, the same routine: wake up, shower, take the blue pill with breakfast. But instead of feeling better, I felt worse. The fog in my brain seemed to thicken. I'd start sentences and forget how to finish them. I'd pick up the phone to call someone and forget who I wanted to talk to. "How are the vitamins working?" Ellie asked during one of her visits. She was sorting through my mail, something she'd started doing recently because I'd apparently forgotten to pay my electric bill. "I don't think they're helping," I said. "If anything, I feel more confused." Ellie frowned. "That's probably just your condition getting worse, Mom. These things progress. But the vitamins will help slow it down. You just need to be patient." My condition. The way she said it made it sound like I had a diagnosis, something official and irreversible. But no doctor had told me I had anything wrong with me. Maybe I should skip them for a day or two just to see. "No, Mom. Ellie's voice was sharper than usual. You can't just stop taking medication like that. It's dangerous. You need to be consistent if you want them to work. Medication. Not vitamins anymore, but medication. The distinction felt important, though I couldn't quite grasp why. That afternoon, after Ellie left, I sat in my living room staring at the bottle of pills on my coffee table. Something deep in my gut told me they were wrong, but when I tried to think clearly about it, to form a coherent thought about what exactly was bothering me, my mind felt like it was moving through molasses. I picked up the bottle and read the label again. The company name was unfamiliar, and there was no phone number or website listed. The more I stared at it, the more suspicious it seemed. But then again, maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe this was part of whatever was happening to my mind. My neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, knocked on my door around 4 o'clock. She was holding a casserole dish and wearing the concerned expression I'd been seeing a lot lately. "Kelly, honey, are you feeling all right? I saw you standing in your driveway this morning in your pajamas, just staring at the street. I had no memory of that. None at all." The realization hit me like a physical blow, and I had to grip the doorframe to steady myself. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." Mrs. Henderson studied my face. "Have you been taking any new medications? You look different." Before I could answer, I heard Ellie's BMW pulling into my driveway. She must have forgotten something. "That's my daughter," I told Mrs. Henderson. "She's been helping me with some health issues." Ellie walked up the front steps, her smile tight when she saw Mrs. Henderson. "Hello, Mrs. Henderson. How are you?" "I was just checking on your mother. She seems a bit off lately." Ellie put her arm around my shoulders. "Mom's been having some memory problems. We're working with her doctor to get it sorted out." Working with her doctor, but I hadn't seen any doctor. When had that happened? Mrs. Henderson nodded sympathetically. "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do to help?" "Actually," Ellie said, "it would be better if Mom had fewer visitors right now. Too much stimulation can make the confusion worse." After Mrs. Henderson left, Ellie and I went inside. She immediately went to the coffee table and picked up the vitamin bottle. "Have you been taking these regularly?" she asked. "Yes, every morning like you said." "Good. Consistency is key." She shook the bottle, counting the pills inside. "You'll need a refill soon. I'll pick up another bottle tomorrow." As she spoke, I felt a strange tingling sensation in my hands and feet. The room seemed to tilt slightly, and I had to sit down. "Mom, are you okay?" "I feel dizzy," I said, "and nauseous." Ellie knelt beside my chair. "It's probably just low blood sugar. When did you eat last?" I tried to remember, but the day felt like a blur. "I don't know. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Mom. You're not taking care of yourself. You're forgetting to eat, forgetting to take care of basic needs. We might need to consider other options." Other options. The phrase sent a chill through me, though I couldn't say why. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing despite the fog that seemed to surround my thoughts. Something was very wrong, but every time I tried to grasp what it was, the thought slipped away like water through my fingers. I thought about Mrs. Henderson's visit, about her mentioning that I'd been standing in my driveway in my pajamas. I thought about Ellie's reaction, about how quickly she'd wanted to discourage visitors. I thought about the bitter taste of the vitamins and how much worse I'd been feeling since I started taking them. But mostly, I thought about the look in Ellie's eyes when she talked about my condition. There was something there that didn't match her concerned words, something that looked almost like satisfaction. As I finally drifted off to sleep, one clear thought managed to break through the haze. Tomorrow, I would not take the blue pill. The next morning, I woke up with the clearest head I'd had in weeks. For the first time in days, I remembered exactly where I was and what day it was. Tuesday. The garbage trucks would come around 10 in the morning, and I needed to get the bins to the curb. I made myself breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, and deliberately left the blue pill in its bottle. As I ate, I felt more like myself than I had since this whole nightmare began. My thoughts felt sharper, more connected. But by noon, that clarity was fading. My hands started shaking and I felt dizzy again. Maybe Ellie was right. Maybe I really did need those vitamins. When she arrived for her regular Tuesday visit, She immediately noticed the full bottle on my counter. "Mom, you didn't take your vitamin this morning." "I forgot," I lied. Ellie's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "We talked about this. You have to be consistent." She shook out a pill and handed it to me with a glass of water. "Take it now." I hesitated. Maybe I should see a real doctor first. Get a proper diagnosis before I keep taking these. "Mom, we've been through this. These are helping you. You just don't remember because of your condition." Ellie's voice had that patient tone adults use with small children. "Dr. Peterson recommended them specifically for you." Dr. Peterson. I tried to remember when I'd seen Dr. Peterson, but everything was fuzzy. Had I forgotten an entire doctor's appointment? "When did I see Dr. Peterson?" I asked. Ellie sighed heavily. "Last week, Mom. I drove you there myself." "You were having one of your bad days, so I had to do most of the talking." I took the pill, swallowing it with the water she handed me. Within an hour, the familiar fog settled back over my thoughts. Over the next few days, I noticed Ellie had started documenting things. She'd pull out her phone and record me when I was confused or couldn't remember something. "Mom, what day is it?" she asked during one of these sessions. I stared at her, my mind blank. Thursday? It's Sunday, Mom." She spoke clearly toward the phone. This is the third time this week she's been confused about what day it is. "Why are you recording me?" I asked, feeling uncomfortable. "For Dr. Peterson. He wants to see how you're progressing." She lowered the phone but didn't turn it off. "Mom, do you remember what you had for breakfast?" I couldn't. The morning felt like it had happened weeks ago instead of hours ago. "See? This is what I'm talking about." Ellie's voice was sad, but her eyes seemed almost excited. "It's getting worse." That evening, she called my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. I could hear her from the kitchen where I was pretending to wash dishes. "I'm really worried about her," Ellie was saying. Yesterday she called me at 3 a.m. asking why there were strangers in her house. There was nobody there. And this morning I found her trying to make coffee with orange juice instead of water. I had no memory of either of those things happening. The thought terrified me more than anything else. Not just that I was losing my mind, but that I was losing entire chunks of time. Mrs. Henderson came over the next day with another casserole. Ellie answered the door before I could get there. "How is she doing?" Mrs. Henderson asked in a low voice. "Not well," Ellie replied. "The doctor says it's progressing faster than expected. We might need to start looking at other living arrangements." My heart stopped. Other living arrangements. She was talking about putting me in a home. "Oh my," Mrs. Henderson said. "She's so young for that." "Sometimes it happens," Ellie said sadly. "The important thing is making sure she's safe." I felt like I was listening to them discuss a stranger, not me. When had I become someone who couldn't be trusted to live in her own home? That afternoon, Ellie stayed longer than usual. She went through my house with a notebook, writing things down. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just making a list of things that might be dangerous for you," she said. "Like this lamp cord. You could trip over it. And these throw rugs are a fall hazard." She moved through my home like she was cataloging everything, making notes about furniture placement and potential hazards. It felt like she was preparing for something, but I couldn't think clearly enough to figure out what. "Ellie," I said, trying to focus through the mental fog. "I don't remember calling you at 3 a.m. She looked up from her notebook. "That's the problem, Mom. You don't remember a lot of things lately, but I would remember being scared enough to call you about strangers in my house." Ellie set down her pen and looked at me with what appeared to be infinite patience. "Mom, that's exactly what this disease does. It steals your memories. You could have an entire conversation with someone and forget it 5 minutes later. Disease. Not condition anymore, but disease. When had it become a disease? "What disease?" I asked. "What exactly is wrong with me?" Ellie exchanged a look with herself. The kind of look you give when you're dealing with someone who's asked the same question multiple times. "Early onset dementia, Mom. We've talked about this, but I was sure we hadn't. I was sure this was the first time anyone had used that word. Dementia. The word hit me like a physical blow. "Are you sure?" maybe I should get a second opinion. Mom, Dr. Peterson is one of the best neurologists in the state, and besides, you've already gotten a second opinion. And a third. They all agree, 3 doctors. I had no memory of seeing 3 doctors. How was that possible? That night, Ellie made dinner for both of us. She'd been doing that more often lately, bringing groceries and cooking meals. She said it was because I'd been forgetting to eat, but I couldn't remember being hungry or forgetting meals. As we ate, she brought up something that made my blood run cold. "I've been looking at some facilities," she said casually, cutting her chicken into precise pieces. "Places that specialize in memory care." I set down my fork. "Facilities? Assisted living places, Mom. Somewhere you'd be safe and have people to help you 24 hours a day." "I don't need help 24 hours a day." Ellie gave me that patient look again. "Mom, yesterday you left the stove on for 6 hours. You could have burned the house down." I had no memory of that either. The gaps in my memory were becoming caverns, swallowing entire days. "I want to see these doctors," I said suddenly. "I want to talk to Dr. Peterson myself." "Of course," Ellie said smoothly. "I'll set up an appointment. But Mom, you have to understand, your condition makes it hard for you to retain information. That's why I've been handling the medical appointments and keeping track of what the doctors say." After dinner, Ellie went upstairs to what used to be her childhood bedroom. She'd been staying over more frequently, saying she was worried about leaving me alone. I could hear her on the phone, her voice low but carrying through the thin walls. "Yes, it's getting much worse," I heard her say. No, she doesn't remember our conversation about the living facilities. "I think we need to move faster than we planned." Move faster than we planned. The words echoed in my head as I sat alone in my living room, staring at the bottle of blue pills on my coffee table. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. But every time I tried to think clearly about it, the fog rolled back in, and my thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. I picked up the bottle and read the label again. Memory support complex. But what if they weren't supporting my memory at all? What if they were doing the opposite? The thought was so clear, so sharp, that it cut through the haze like a knife. What if Ellie was lying? What if there were no doctors, no diagnosis, no disease? What if my own daughter was poisoning me? The idea was so horrible, so unthinkable, that I almost dismissed it immediately. But as I sat there in the growing darkness, listening to Ellie's voice upstairs discussing my future like I was already gone, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd stumbled onto the truth. And if I was right, I was running out of time to prove it. The collapse happened on a Thursday morning. I remember because I'd been trying to skip the blue pill for 2 days straight, and my mind was starting to clear again. I was standing in my kitchen, making coffee the way I'd done for 40 years, when suddenly the room tilted sideways and everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed with bright fluorescent lights burning my eyes and the antiseptic smell of disinfectant filling my nostrils. My mouth felt like cotton, and there was an IV line snaking into my left arm. Ellie was sitting in a chair beside my bed, talking to a doctor in hushed tones. "She's been getting progressively worse over the past few months," Ellie was saying, her voice thick with what sounded like genuine concern. The confusion, the memory loss, the episodes where she doesn't recognize where she is, episodes where I didn't recognize where I was. I tried to remember having any such episodes, but my thoughts felt muddy and disconnected. The doctor, a middle-aged man with graying hair and kind eyes, glanced at his clipboard. "And you said she's been seeing Dr. Peterson for these symptoms?" "Yes, for about 6 months now. We've tried several medications, but nothing seems to be helping. If anything, she's declining faster." I tried to speak, to tell them I felt fine, but my tongue felt thick and uncooperative. All that came out was a weak groan. "Oh, Mom, you're awake!" Ellie jumped up from her chair and took my hand. Her palm was warm, but something about her touch made my skin crawl. "You gave me such a scare. You collapsed in your kitchen. I found you unconscious on the floor." The doctor approached my bedside. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm Dr. Williams. You're at St. Mary's Hospital. Do you remember what happened?" I tried to focus on his face, but everything seemed hazy. I was making coffee, I managed to whisper. That's good, Dr. Williams said, making notes on his chart. Do you know what day it is? I thought hard. Thursday. It had been Thursday when I collapsed, but how long had I been unconscious? Thursday? I guessed. Ellie and Dr. Williams exchanged a look. Mom, it's Saturday, Ellie said gently. You've been unconscious for 2 days. 2 days. I'd lost 2 entire days. The panic that shot through me was so intense I could feel my heart rate spike on the monitor beside my bed. We're going to run some tests, Dr. Williams said. Blood work, brain scans, the usual workup for unexplained loss of consciousness. In the meantime, try to rest. After he left, Ellie pulled her chair closer to my bed. Mom, I'm so glad you're okay. When I found you on the kitchen floor, I thought. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I thought I'd lost you. My pills, I said suddenly, the words coming out clearer than I expected. Where are my pills? What pills, Mom? The blue ones. The vitamins you gave me. Ellie's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Oh, those. I brought them with me. You'll need to keep taking them. Even here in the hospital. They're important for your condition. I want to talk to Dr. Peterson, I said. Of course, Mom. I'll call his office as soon as visiting hours are over. Something about the way she said it made me suspicious. I want his phone number. Mom, you know you get confused when you try to handle medical things yourself. Let me take care of it. But I was feeling more alert than I had in weeks. The IV fluids, or maybe just being away from those blue pills for a few days, had cleared some of the fog from my brain. I want to call him myself. Ellie's smile became strained. Mom, you're in the hospital. You need to focus on getting better, not worrying about phone calls. A young nurse came in to check my vitals. She had short red hair and kind eyes that reminded me of my youngest son, David. How are you feeling, Mrs. Morrison? She asked as she checked my blood pressure. Better, I said. Much better, actually. That's wonderful to hear. Dr. Williams will be pleased. After she left, I asked Ellie to bring me my purse from home. I want my phone and my address book. Mom, you don't need those things right now. I want them, I said more firmly than I'd spoken in months. Ellie sighed. Fine, I'll bring them tomorrow. But I had a feeling she wouldn't. Something was happening here. Something I couldn't quite grasp. But my instincts were screaming that Ellie was lying to me about something fundamental. That evening, when visiting hours were over and Ellie had gone home, I lay in my hospital bed staring at the ceiling and trying to piece together what I could remember. The clearer my head became, the more suspicious I grew about those blue pills. The next morning, Dr. Williams came in with a tablet computer and a serious expression. Mrs. Morrison, we've gotten some of your blood work back, and I need to ask you some questions. Okay, I said, sitting up straighter. Are you currently taking any medications? Prescription or over-the-counter? Just vitamins, I said. My daughter brings them to me. Blue pills for memory support. Dr. Williams frowned at his tablet. Can you describe these vitamins? What do they look like exactly? Small, round, blue. They taste bitter. And how long have you been taking them? I tried to think. A few months, I think, since I started having memory problems. Dr. Williams made some notes. Mrs. Morrison, your blood work shows elevated levels of several substances that aren't typically found in vitamin supplements. We're going to need to see these pills. My heart started racing. What kind of substances? Sedatives, primarily. Medications that would cause drowsiness, confusion, and memory problems. The room seemed to spin around me. Sedatives. Not vitamins. Sedatives. That's impossible, I whispered. My daughter wouldn't. But even as I said it, pieces were falling into place. The bitter taste. The way my confusion got worse after taking them. The way Ellie always insisted I had to be consistent with them. We'll need to run more comprehensive tests, Dr. Williams said gently. But Mrs. Morrison, if someone has been giving you these substances without your knowledge, that's a very serious matter. When Ellie arrived for her afternoon visit, she was carrying a small overnight bag. I brought you some things from home, she said brightly. Your pajamas, your toothbrush, and your vitamins. She pulled out the familiar bottle of blue pills and set it on my bedside table. Dr. Williams wants to see those, I said quietly. Ellie's hand froze halfway to her purse. What? The doctor wants to test my vitamins. He found sedatives in my blood. For just a moment, Ellie's carefully composed expression cracked. I saw something flash across her face. Panic, anger, calculation. Then the mask slipped back into place. That's impossible, Mom. These are just vitamins. Maybe the hospital made a mistake with your blood work. He wants to test the pills, I repeated. Ellie picked up the bottle and held it protectively against her chest. These are prescribed specifically for you by Dr. Peterson. I'm not letting some random hospital doctor mess with your treatment. Then call Dr. Peterson. Have him explain to Dr. Williams what I'm supposed to be taking. Ellie's jaw tightened. Mom, you're being paranoid. This is exactly the kind of confusion that's part of your condition. But I wasn't confused anymore. For the first time in months, I was thinking clearly. And what I was thinking was making me sick to my stomach. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my room and take those pills with you. Ellie's face went white. Mom, you don't mean that. You're just upset because you're in the hospital. I said get out. She stood there for a long moment, the bottle of pills clutched in her hands, her eyes darting between me and the door like she was calculating something. Fine, she said finally. But when you calm down and realize you need me, I'll be here. Because unlike some people, I don't abandon family. After she left, I pressed the call button for the nurse. The same young redhead from yesterday appeared within minutes. I need to speak to Dr. Williams, I said. It's urgent. He's with another patient right now, but I can get him as soon as he's free. Please, and I need to use a phone. I need to call someone. 20 minutes later, Dr. Williams was back in my room, and I told him everything. About the blue pills, about my growing suspicion that Ellie had been drugging me, about the supposed doctor visits I couldn't remember, and the diagnosis that didn't make sense. Mrs. Morrison, he said carefully, these are very serious accusations. Are you certain about what you're telling me? I'm more certain than I've been about anything in months, I said. Doctor, I don't have dementia, do I? He consulted his tablet again. Based on your cognitive tests since you've been here, and the fact that your mental clarity has improved significantly since your admission, I would say that's very unlikely. But we'll need to do more thorough testing to be sure. And the sedatives in my blood? Those are definitely not vitamins. As the reality of what had been happening to me sank in, I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak that was almost overwhelming. My own daughter. My own child had been slowly poisoning me, stealing my mind, planning to steal my life. But why? What could she possibly gain from destroying me? Then I remembered her notebook, the way she'd been cataloging everything in my house, talking about other living arrangements and facilities that specialized in memory care. My house, my savings, my life insurance. Ellie hadn't been trying to help me. She'd been trying to erase me, and she'd almost succeeded. The next morning brought Dr. Williams with a folder full of test results and an expression that confirmed my worst fears. He pulled up a chair beside my bed and opened the folder with the careful deliberation of someone delivering life-changing news. Mrs. Morrison, I've consulted with several colleagues about your case, he began. Your blood work shows traces of lorazepam, zolpidem, and diphenhydramine. All sedatives that would cause exactly the symptoms you've been experiencing. Memory loss, confusion, disorientation, and in high enough doses, unconsciousness. I gripped the bedsheets. Someone's been drugging me. It appears so, yes. These medications, when combined and given regularly over time, would create a pattern of cognitive decline that could easily be mistaken for dementia, especially by someone not looking for chemical causes. How long? I asked. How long would someone have to drug me to get these effects? Dr. Williams consulted his notes. Based on the levels we found and the half-life of these medications, I'd estimate several months of regular dosing. The effects would have been gradual at first, then more pronounced as the substances accumulated in your system. Several months. Exactly how long I'd been taking Ellie's vitamins. "Doctor," I said slowly, "I need you to help me figure out if I really saw the doctors my daughter says I've been seeing." "What do you mean?" "She claims I've seen 3 different doctors who all diagnosed me with early-onset dementia. Dr. Peterson, specifically. But I can't remember any of these appointments." Dr. Williams frowned. "That would be highly unusual. For early-onset dementia, we typically see patients multiple times, run extensive tests. There would be a significant paper trail." "Can you check? Can you find out if I've really been seeing these doctors?" "I can make some calls," he said. "Mrs. Morrison, do you have any other family members I could contact? Someone who might be able to provide information about your medical history?" I thought about my sons. Marcus in California, who rarely called. David overseas with the military. Neither of them would know anything about my recent medical appointments. What about friends? Neighbors? "Mrs. Henderson," I said suddenly. "She lives next door. She might have noticed things." Dr. Williams made a note. "I'll need her contact information." After he left, I lay in bed thinking about everything Ellie had done. The way she'd discouraged visitors, claiming too much stimulation was bad for me. The way she'd started managing my mail and bills. The notebook where she'd cataloged everything in my house like she was preparing an inventory. A new nurse came in around lunchtime, an older woman with steel gray hair and no-nonsense demeanor. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm Janet. I'll be taking care of you this afternoon." She checked my chart. "How are you feeling?" "Much better," I said. "Clearer than I've felt in months." Janet nodded approvingly. "Dr. Williams mentioned you've been having some family issues. Sometimes that's harder to recover from than the medical problems." "My daughter's been drugging me," I said bluntly. "She wanted everyone to think I had dementia." Janet's expression didn't change. After 30 years of nursing, I suspected she'd seen everything. "That's a serious allegation," she said carefully, "but not unheard of, unfortunately. We see cases of elder abuse more often than most people realize." Elder abuse. The term hit me like a slap. I was the victim of elder abuse, perpetrated by my own child. "What happens now?" I asked. "That depends on what you want to happen, and what the investigation reveals." "Investigation?" "Dr. Williams has already contacted Adult Protective Services. When there's suspected drugging of an elderly person by a family member, it has to be reported. They'll want to interview you." My stomach churned. Adult Protective Services. This was really happening. My daughter wasn't just manipulative or misguided. She was a criminal. That afternoon, Dr. Williams returned with updates. "I've made some calls about Dr. Peterson," he said. "There is a neurologist by that name in the city, but his office has no record of you as a patient. They've never seen you." The room felt like it was spinning. "What about the other doctors she mentioned?" "I'm still checking, but Mrs. Morrison, I think we both know what I'm going to find." That evening, a woman from Adult Protective Services came to interview me. Her name was Linda Carter, and she had the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too many families destroy themselves. "Mrs. Morrison, I need you to tell me everything you remember about the past few months," she said, pulling out a recording device. "Start from the beginning." I told her about the memory problems, the vitamins, the supposed doctor visits I couldn't remember, about Ellie's recordings of my confused moments and her talk of facilities and other living arrangements. "Do you have any idea why your daughter might want to do this to you?" Linda asked. "Money," I said without hesitation. "My house is worth about $300,000. I have about $150,000 in savings, plus life insurance. If she could prove I was incompetent, she could become your guardian and gain control of your assets," Linda finished. "It's more common than you'd think." The next morning brought another revelation. Dr. Williams had gotten authorization to search my house with a police officer present. What they found made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Morrison," Dr. Williams said, setting a plastic evidence bag on my bedside table. "We found these in your kitchen cabinet." Inside the bag were 3 different prescription bottles, all with labels that had been carefully removed. One still had a partial label showing part of a name, not mine. "We also found this in your daughter's old bedroom." He handed me a manila folder. Inside were documents I'd never seen before, power of attorney forms with my signature. Except I'd never signed them. Medical forms declaring me incompetent, signed by doctors I'd never met. And most chilling of all, brochures for memory care facilities with notes in Ellie's handwriting about costs and admission requirements. "She'd been planning this for months," I whispered. "It appears so. Mrs. Morrison, there's something else." He pulled out a sheet of paper, a bank statement from an account I didn't recognize, but it had my name on it. "Your daughter opened a joint account in both your names 6 months ago. She's been depositing your Social Security checks into it instead of your regular account." I stared at the numbers. My Social Security was $1,200 a month. 6 months' worth, $7,200. That should have been in my checking account. "She's been stealing from me, too." Dr. Williams nodded grimly. "The police are building a case. Between the drugging, the forged documents, and the financial theft, your daughter is looking at multiple felony charges." I should have felt satisfied, vindicated. Instead, I just felt hollow. This was my daughter. The little girl I'd rocked to sleep, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, who I'd been so proud of when she became successful. Where had I gone wrong? How had I raised someone capable of doing this to me? "Mrs. Morrison," Dr. Williams said gently, "this isn't your fault. Some people are just wired differently. They see opportunities where others see family." That afternoon, Linda Carter returned with an update that made my heart sink even further. "We've arrested your daughter," she said. "She was at your house when the police arrived, apparently removing items. She had a suitcase full of your jewelry and important documents. What happens now?" "She'll be charged with elder abuse, fraud, theft, and several other crimes. The district attorney thinks this is a strong case." "How long could she go to prison? With multiple felonies? Potentially 10 to 15 years. 10 to 15 years. My daughter, who I'd loved unconditionally her entire life, was going to prison because she'd tried to destroy me for money." "Mrs. Morrison," Linda continued, "there's something else you need to know. We interviewed your neighbors as part of the investigation. Mrs. Henderson told us that your daughter had been telling people in the neighborhood that you were getting violent and unpredictable. She was laying groundwork to make your eventual institutionalization seem necessary and justified. Even when she was poisoning me, Ellie had been thinking 3 steps ahead, preparing explanations for why her poor mother had to be put away for everyone's safety. She also told Mrs. Henderson that you'd been leaving her large sums of money in your will, but that you'd recently become paranoid and wanted to change it. She was setting up reasons why any changes you might make to your will could be challenged as the product of dementia. The scope of Ellie's planning was breathtaking. She hadn't just been drugging me, she'd been constructing an entire false narrative about my mental state, my behavior, even my financial intentions. If I hadn't collapsed and ended up in the hospital, if Dr. Williams hadn't been smart enough to test for sedatives in my blood, Ellie's plan would have worked perfectly. I would have been declared incompetent and institutionalized. She would have gained control of my assets. And eventually, when I died in some memory care facility, drugged into oblivion and forgotten by the world, she would have inherited everything. The perfect crime, perpetrated by the perfect daughter. Except she'd gotten greedy and increased the dosage too much, causing me to collapse. That single mistake had unraveled everything. As I lay in my hospital bed that night, staring at the ceiling and processing everything I'd learned, I realized something important. I wasn't just the victim here. I was the survivor. Ellie had tried to erase me, to steal not just my money, but my mind, my identity, my very self. But I was still here, still thinking clearly, still fighting. And tomorrow, I was going home to start rebuilding the life she'd tried to take away from me. I was discharged from the hospital on a Wednesday morning, 5 days after I'd collapsed in my kitchen. Dr. Williams had cleared me medically, but more importantly, he'd cleared me mentally. The neurological test confirmed what I already knew. There was nothing wrong with my mind except the chemicals my daughter had been feeding me. Linda Carter from Adult Protective Services drove me home. As we pulled into my driveway, I saw that police tape still stretched across my front door from when they'd searched the house and arrested Ellie. "Are you sure you want to stay here alone tonight?" Linda asked as we sat in her car, looking at my house. "We can arrange temporary placement if you'd prefer. This is my home," I said firmly. I'm not going to let her take that away from me, too. The house felt different when I walked inside, not just because of the obvious signs of the police search, drawers left partially open, papers scattered on my kitchen table. It felt different because I was different. The fog that had clouded my thoughts for months was completely gone, replaced by a clarity that was almost startling. I walked through each room, seeing things with new eyes. The loose carpet in the hallway that Ellie had claimed was a fall hazard. It had been there for 15 years without causing me any problems. The lamp cord she'd worried about. It was tucked safely against the wall where it had always been. She'd been creating problems that didn't exist, building a case for why I couldn't live independently. In my bedroom, I found that she'd removed several framed photographs from my dresser. Pictures of her with me and her father, family portraits from when she was young. She'd been erasing herself from my life, even as she destroyed it. The hardest discovery was in my kitchen. Hidden behind the flour canister, I found a small notebook in Ellie's handwriting. The entries were dated, going back 6 months. Day 1, started vitamins. Mom seemed suspicious but took them. Day 15, Mom forgot Mrs. Henderson's name. Good progress. Day 32, Mom left stove on for 20 minutes. Got it on video. Day 45, called facilities. Maple Grove has opening in August. I sank into a kitchen chair as I read entry after entry documenting my decline, her satisfaction with my confusion, her plans for my future. But the final entry, dated just a week before my collapse, made my blood run cold. Mom getting suspicious about vitamins. May need to increase dosage. Timeline moved up. Goal is placement by July 1st. She'd nearly killed me because I was starting to figure out what she was doing. My phone rang, startling me from the notebook. The caller ID showed the county jail. This is a collect call from an inmate at Valley County Detention Center. Will you accept charges? I hesitated, then pressed 1 to accept. Mom? Ellie's voice sounded small and scared, nothing like the confident woman who'd been systematically destroying my life. What do you want, Ellie? I need you to help me. The bail is set at $50,000. If you could just put up the house as collateral. I almost laughed. Even now, even after being caught, she was trying to manipulate me. You want me to risk my house to bail you out of jail? Mom, I'm your daughter. This is all a big misunderstanding. Those weren't real drugs. They were just strong vitamins. The doctors are overreacting. Strong vitamins don't require prescriptions, Ellie, and they certainly don't cause someone to be unconscious for 2 days. You're confused again, Mom. This is exactly what I was trying to prevent. The casual gaslighting, even now, was breathtaking. She was still trying to convince me that my clear thinking was actually confusion. I found your notebook, I said quietly, silence on the other end of the line. I read every entry. How you documented my decline like it was some kind of experiment. How you planned to put me in Maple Grove by July 1st. Mom, I can explain. You increased the dosage because I was getting suspicious. You almost killed me because I was starting to figure out what you were doing. It wasn't like that. Ellie's voice cracked. I was trying to help you. You were getting confused and forgetting things. I was just trying to manage your symptoms until we could get you proper care. I wasn't confused until you started drugging me. You were. You called me at 3 a.m. asking about strangers in your house. You forgot Mrs. Henderson's name. You left the stove on. None of that happened, Ellie. You made it all up. Another long silence. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. You have no idea what it's been like, watching you live in this house while I struggle to make ends meet. Do you know what my mortgage payment is? $2,800 a month. Do you know what I make selling real estate in this market? Some months barely enough to cover my car payment. There it was. The truth, finally. So you decided to steal my house. I decided to secure my future. You're 64 years old, Mom. How much longer are you realistically going to need that house? I'm 38 with a lifetime of expenses ahead of me. The entitlement in her voice was staggering. She genuinely believed she deserved my assets more than I did. You were going to put me in a memory care facility and let me rot there while you sold my house and spent my money. Those facilities are nice, Mom. You would have been taken care of. Drugged into oblivion and forgotten. Comfortable and safe. I felt a wave of disgust so strong it was physical. You're not my daughter anymore. Mom, don't say that. I made some mistakes, but we can work this out. Family is family. Family doesn't poison family, Ellie. Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't try to erase family. I never meant for you to get hurt. You meant for me to disappear. That was the whole point. I hung up the phone and immediately called the phone company to block all calls from the detention center. I never wanted to hear her voice again. That evening, Mrs. Henderson knocked on my door with another casserole and an expression of deep concern. Kelly, honey, I am so sorry. If I had known what was happening. You couldn't have known, I said, inviting her inside. She fooled everyone. I feel terrible about believing her stories, about you getting violent and confused. Mrs. Henderson sat on my couch, shaking her head. She was so convincing. The way she talked about being worried about you, about having to make difficult decisions for your own good. She's very good at lying. The police told me about the drugs, about what she was doing to you. Mrs. Henderson's eyes filled with tears. How could a daughter do that to her own mother? It was the question I'd been asking myself over and over. How had I raised someone capable of such calculated cruelty? I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, I said. The way she always insisted on handling my medical appointments. How she discouraged visitors. The way she'd get angry if I suggested seeing different doctors or getting second opinions. She isolated you, Mrs. Henderson said. Classic abuser behavior. Abuser. That's what Ellie was. An abuser. The word felt strange applied to my own daughter, but it was accurate. What happens now? Mrs. Henderson asked. Now I get my life back. The next morning brought a visit from Linda Carter with updates on the legal proceedings. Your daughter's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, Linda told me as we sat at my kitchen table. The prosecutor rejected it. They want to take this to trial. What kind of plea deal? 2 years in prison, restitution of the stolen money, and a restraining order. But honestly, Mrs. Morrison, what she did to you deserves more than 2 years. I thought about it. 2 years seemed like nothing for nearly destroying my life. But a trial would mean reliving everything, having it all made public. What do you think I should do? That's entirely up to you. But I will say this. Cases like yours are becoming more common. Elder abuse by adult children is on the rise. If you pursue a full prosecution, it sends a message that this behavior has serious consequences. That afternoon, I made my decision. I called the prosecutor's office and told them I wanted to proceed with the trial. Ellie had made her choices. Now she could face the consequences. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following month. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of my own power. For months, Ellie had been making decisions about my life, my health, my future. She'd treated me like I was already gone, like my wishes and feelings didn't matter. But I was still here, still thinking clearly, still capable of fighting for myself. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out the jewelry box where I kept my important papers. My will was there. The one Ellie had been so concerned about. The one she'd told Mrs. Henderson I might change due to paranoia. I was going to change it. But not because of paranoia. Because of clarity. Ellie's name was coming out of it entirely. Everything I'd planned to leave her would go to my sons instead, and to charities that helped elderly people protect themselves from abuse. She'd gambled everything on my mental decline and her ability to control me. She'd lost. And I was just getting started on reclaiming the life she'd tried to steal. 6 months later, I sat in the front row of a courtroom watching my daughter be sentenced to 8 years in prison. The trial had lasted 3 weeks, and every day had brought new revelations about the scope of her deception. The prosecutor had built an airtight case. The forged documents, the stolen Social Security checks, the prescription bottles with removed labels, my medical records showing no sign of dementia, it all painted a picture of calculated, premeditated abuse. But what sealed her fate was her own notebook. Entry after entry of her documenting my decline with cold clinical detachment, planning my institutionalization like a business project, adjusting drug dosages based on my level of suspicion. The defendant showed a callous disregard for her mother's well-being and human dignity, Judge Harrison said as he delivered the sentence. Elder abuse is a serious crime, made more heinous when perpetrated by someone in a position of trust. The court sentences Ellie Morrison to 8 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Ellie didn't turn around to look at me as the bailiff led her away in handcuffs. She'd maintained her innocence throughout the trial, claiming I was confused and that she'd only been trying to help me. Even her own attorney had seemed embarrassed by her testimony. As I walked out of the courthouse, Linda Carter fell into step beside me. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said simply, and I meant it. The months following Ellie's arrest had been the most peaceful of my life in years. Without the constant fog of sedatives clouding my thoughts, I'd rediscovered parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. I'd started painting again, something I hadn't done since before my husband died. I'd joined a book club at the library. I'd even started dating, something I never thought I'd do at 64. His name was Walter, and he was a retired high school teacher who'd lost his wife to cancer 2 years earlier. We'd met at the book club, bonding over our shared love of mystery novels and our mutual bewilderment at modern technology. He knew about Ellie, about what she'd done to me. Instead of treating me like a victim, he treated me like a survivor. The difference meant everything. "What will you do now?" Linda asked as we reached my car. "Live," I said. "Really live." The house felt different when I got home, lighter somehow. I'd redecorated Ellie's old bedroom, turning it into an art studio. The walls were covered with my paintings, landscapes mostly, bright and colorful scenes that reflected how I felt inside now that the darkness was gone. I'd also made practical changes, new locks on all the doors, a security system, a new bank account at a different institution, with my son Marcus as the only authorized contact. I'd learned hard lessons about trust and vulnerability, but I hadn't let them make me paranoid or bitter. My sons had both called after the sentencing. Marcus had flown in from California for the trial, staying with me for a week and helping me understand how I'd missed the signs of Ellie's manipulation. "She was always good at telling people what they wanted to hear," he'd said. Even as a kid, she could charm her way out of anything. David had called from his base in Germany, his voice thick with guilt over not being there to protect me. "I should have visited more," he'd said. "Should have paid attention." "You couldn't have known," I'd told both of them. And I meant it. Ellie had fooled everyone, including herself, into believing her actions were justified. A week after the sentencing, I received a letter from Ellie. It was the first communication I'd had from her since that phone call from jail 6 months earlier. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. "Dear Mom," it began, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to try one more time to make you understand. I was never trying to hurt you. I was trying to help you transition to the next phase of your life in a way that would be comfortable for everyone. Even now, even after being convicted and sentenced, she couldn't admit what she'd really done. She was still trying to frame her abuse as care, her theft as help. I hope someday you'll forgive me and we can rebuild our relationship. I'm still your daughter, and you're still my mother. That has to count for something." I read the letter twice, then tore it into small pieces and threw it in the trash. Some relationships couldn't be rebuilt. Some betrayals were too deep, too fundamental. Ellie hadn't just stolen my money or tried to take my house. She'd tried to steal my mind, my identity, my very self. Forgiveness might come someday, but reconciliation never would. That evening, Walter came over for dinner. He'd been doing that more often lately, and I'd started looking forward to our quiet conversations over meals I actually remembered cooking. "How was court today?" he asked as he helped me clear the dishes. "Justice was served," I said. 8 years. Walter nodded approvingly. "Good. What she did to you was unforgivable." "I keep thinking about something the prosecutor said during closing arguments," I told him. "That elder abuse cases are becoming more common because people see aging parents as burdens instead of people." "Is that how you think Ellie saw you?" I considered the question. "I think she saw me as an obstacle to the life she wanted. My house was worth $300,000. My savings were another $150,000. In her mind, I was selfishly hoarding resources she needed. But it was your life." "Exactly. It was my life. And she tried to take it away." We moved to the living room, where Walter poured us each a glass of wine. The evening light was streaming through my windows, illuminating the paintings on my walls. "I've been thinking about traveling," I said. "Maybe taking that art class in Italy I've always talked about." Walter smiled. "That sounds wonderful. I've always wanted to see Tuscany." The suggestion hung in the air between us, full of possibility. 6 months ago, I'd been a confused old woman being slowly poisoned by her own daughter, destined for a memory care facility. Now I was making plans to travel to Italy with a man who made me laugh and treated me like I was still capable of adventures. "Would you like to come with me?" I asked. "I thought you'd never ask." Later that evening, after Walter had gone home, I sat on my front porch with a cup of tea watching the sunset. "Mrs." Henderson waved from her garden, and I waved back. We'd grown closer since the trial, bonding over our shared experience of being deceived by Ellie. My phone rang, Marcus calling from California to check on me, as he did every few days now. "How are you doing, Mom?" he asked. "I'm good," I said. And for the first time in months, I meant it completely. "I'm really good. I'm proud of you, you know, for fighting back, for not letting her win." "I didn't fight back," I said. "I just survived long enough for the truth to come out." Same thing, really. After we hung up, I remained on the porch as darkness fell around me. The house behind me was mine. Really mine now, with new locks and a security system and no one scheming to take it away. My mind was my own, clear and sharp and free from chemical fog. My future was my own to plan. Ellie had tried to erase me, to reduce me to a problem to be managed and eventually discarded. But I was still here, still thinking, still feeling, still capable of joy and love and new experiences. At 64, I was starting over, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The woman who'd been slowly disappearing under the influence of those blue pills was gone forever. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, more aware of her own worth. I raised my teacup in a silent toast to the evening air, to survival, to justice, to the future that was mine alone to shape. The war for my life was over, and I had won. 8 years from now, when Ellie got out of prison, I'd be 72. I planned to spend those 8 years living so fully, so completely, that by the time she was free, I'd have packed a lifetime of experiences into the years she'd tried to steal from me. The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't anger or bitterness. It was happiness. It was freedom. It was the simple, radical act of refusing to disappear. I finished my tea and went inside, already planning tomorrow. There were art supplies to buy, travel brochures to collect, and a whole new life to live. Ellie had gambled everything on my weakness and confusion. She'd lost because she'd underestimated the most important thing about me. I was stronger than she ever knew. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.